Hi, I'm Nicola and I'm from the Child Behaviour Network. And we're just going to have a think today about routine and structure, particularly how we can put a routine and structure into the school holidays in a way that isn't suffocating. So we're going to jump right into it. And we're going to start by considering where your child might be at right now. So towards the end of term, schools often do things off timetable. They often have sort of treats and rewards, or they might have external people come in to deliver workshops. Your child might be going on school trips. All these different things can happen, which are treats and lovely and exciting, but also can be slightly confusing, particularly if your child has additional needs. They're going to be being presented with a whole range of new challenges, new social situations to try and navigate. They're going to be having to think ahead more. How do I need to behave? What do I need to take with me? What's happening after this? What's happening before this? Because once the routine changes, there's just so much that they then need to think about. So that can be really difficult. That could be a challenge that your child is facing right now. If it's the end of year in particular, your child might be struggling with trying to work out how they feel about September and how they feel about maybe they have a new teacher, maybe they have a new part of the school to go to, maybe they have a whole new school to go to in September. That will inevitably create some underlying anxiety for your child. There's so much for them to think about. There's so much they're unsure of. They're being prepared for it now, but it's not actually happening till September, which is weeks away. So that can be really confusing and difficult for your child to work out whether they need to hold on to that worry or let that go. So what you might be seeing in your child's behaviour is you might be seeing what we describe as a difficulty in self-regulating. So it might be that your child is having some extreme reactions. You might be seeing some bigger behaviours than you normally do, particularly around changes in routine or disappointments. All of these things are indicators that your child perhaps needs some extra support right now in the form of a routine and greater structure. So in the same way that if an adult goes into heart failure, they need CPR. If a child is anxious, they need CPR for their brain. So CPR for the brain stands for consistency, predictability, and reliability. So the routine and structure you put in place will give your child more consistency. They will know that certain things are happening the same every day. They will be able to predict what's coming up and they will feel like they can rely on you to be some consistency in this sort of busyness that might be happening towards the end of term and in the summer holidays. So it's CPR for the brain is really helpful for addressing that underlying anxiety. So if we think of the brain as being like air traffic control, and this is all of our brains, we're all trying to land multiple planes throughout the day, multiple planes at multiple times. This is constantly going on in our brains, subconsciously and consciously. So the examples up there are managing emotions, prioritizing tasks, controlling impulses, and paying attention. So these are some of the examples of things that your child's brain is trying to do. So what we need to do as their carers is try and land some of those planes for them, because the difficulties I just described earlier might be because your child at the moment has too many planes and they're just not able to land them all at once. And so that might be why you're seeing some challenging behaviour. So if they have too many planes, they're not going to be able to land some of them. So landing a plane could be saying to your child, please could you go and get dressed? And you look at your child and they can usually get themselves dressed, but today they seem to have put their trousers on first and then their underwear. And they've got in a muddle. They've got too many planes. They can't land the plane, the getting dressed plane, because they've got too many planes that they're all trying to stop from crashing, and they're trying to land all of these planes at once. So what we can do to help is try and land some of those planes. And routine and structure lands planes. It takes away some of those moving pieces and helps to give them more focus, and it makes it easier for them to go about their life, to regulate their emotions, to carry out tasks. So that's our role. So we need to think that we're landing planes with what we're doing. So today, I'm not actually going to give you a routine. I'm not going to say this is how your day should look, because it will be different for every family. But what I'm going to do is help you to think about how you can create a routine that works for your family. So I will give some examples, but I'm going to start with some guiding principles. So firstly, make it work for you. Everyone's will look different. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing. You know what works for you. You know your child best. So don't worry too much about if other people are doing more activities, less activities. I think like some of the chatter we have in the school playground is, oh, how many clubs does your child do? And then you think, oh, my child's not doing clubs. Should my child be doing clubs? Do what works for you and your family and your child, and that's absolutely fine. Also, flexibility is key. So don't build a routine that is so rigid that it becomes really stressful if the smallest thing sort of goes wrong or needs to be changed. Build in buffer, build in plenty of time for things to be flexible. So for example, just yesterday, we were walking home from school, and it takes about 10 minutes to walk home from school. I'd allowed half an hour because things take longer with children. And the children said, it's a nice day. Can we go and play in the park? And I thought, sure, we've built in the buffer. So yes, I said, we can do 10 minutes in the park. 10 minutes in the park turned into half an hour in the park because they played in the park for 10 minutes and then came to me and said, I took my shoes and socks off to go in the sandpit. And I thought, well, that's sensible. Yep. Okay, great. I now need to clean my feet before I put my shoes and socks back on. He was there for 10 minutes cleaning in between every single toe because he didn't like the feeling of the sand in between his toes when he put his shoes and socks on. So couldn't get back to the car till he'd cleaned his feet. And I just thought, well, a good thing I'd built in my buffer, because a 10-minute trip to the park has now turned into a 20-minute trip because it's taken 10 minutes to put our shoes back on at the end. But it was fine because I wasn't, we weren't in a rush because I hadn't left it right up to the last minute before we needed to go. So just build in those buffers because children inevitably will throw you some curveballs. Also, we're going to come up with a routine and a plan for the day, but it can change. So that's okay. So I don't want you to worry that if you put a routine in place, then you're sort of absolutely committed to it and tied to it, and it's going to be a big drama for your child if it changes. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but your child will actually find it easier to deal with change if they knew what the routine was in the first place and they understand what's changed and why, rather than them having no idea what the plan was in the first place and then it feeling like there's a change. That's actually much harder for them to deal with. Also easier said than done, but we're going to try our best to plan ahead, have a look at the week, have a look at whether you have the right balance of activities and rest and social time and introvert time. There's nothing worse than agreeing to a play date and then thinking, well, I've just had a really stressful 2 days. The last thing I now need is to have more people coming round or whatever it is. So sometimes I think in the holidays, it can be really easy to think there's all these lovely things to do, but we need to make sure we're getting that balance of doing things, but also finding time to rest and recover. Communication. So the whole point of coming up with a routine is, yes, for you so that you know what's going on, but it's also that you communicate it with your children so that they know what's going on, because the whole thing only works if the whole family is on board. There's no point you having a really clear idea in your head of what's happening, and actually the children are still none the wiser. So it's really important that you communicate the plan with them throughout the day. I also like, and I think this is particularly helpful for children with additional needs, if you can bookend your day with some very, very consistent routine. So you have some things that happen, your morning routine and your evening routine, they always look the same. And that can be really helpful to get your day off to a good start if your child struggles with anxiety. And it can help your child to wind down at the end of the day. No matter what's happened within the day, you know that end routine is always going to be the same. You don't need to think about it. They don't need to think about it. At the end, we'll go through all of the benefits of routine, but it just helps to create more peace and harmony in the house if we can start and end the day well. So I think one of the best ways to communicate your routine with your child is using a visual timetable. So these can be an absolute game changer for all children, but particularly if your child has additional needs, I can't recommend them highly enough. So visual timetables can actually be really simple. I think I don't want people to think this sort of needs to be something that's a really involved process and is going to take up loads of your time and has to be, there's not a special way of doing it. It can be really simple, but actually it can be so incredibly helpful for your child. So we're going to have a look at some different types of visual timetables we can use. You are an expert in your child, so you will know what's stage appropriate for them. It's really important that a visual timetable is referred to throughout the day. So you start the day off by talking your child through the plan for the day with their visual timetable. And then throughout the day, you're going to refer to it. So you're going to physically hold it or point to it, however we choose to do it. And you can say, this is now finished. We've got back from the park is finished. Now we're going to have some lunch. And then after lunch, we're going to play Lego. So we're referring throughout the day, physically showing it to them, reminding them that it's there. So visual timetable, you can literally draw it on a scrap piece of paper, just draw out a couple of pictures. You can put it up on a whiteboard or a cork board if you have that in your house. You can create them on a website called Widget is really helpful. I've got a link to that at the end. Whatever way is easiest for you. If you are super creative and you love doing this sort of thing, you can make little symbols and laminate them and put them on Velcro and stick them on things, put them on pegs on a like hang up a washing line, and you could peg the pictures on and then you can move them around. It honestly is whatever works for you and for your children. There isn't really a right way or a wrong way to do it. But I am going to run through some examples. So this is the sort of simplest format of a visual timetable. This is just what we call a now and next. So this is just saying to the child, this is what we're doing now. Next, we're going to do this other activity. This can be particularly helpful if your child has to do something they don't like. So it might be, now we're going to the dentist. Next, we're going to go to the cafe and get a treat. It helps them to get past the thing that they don't like doing because they know something positive is happening afterwards. Also very helpful if you have a child who maybe struggles with waiting. So if you're at home and you have some things you need to do before you can go to the park, using the play and then park example, you're trying to get on with some things and your child keeps saying, are we going now? Can we go to the park now? I'm ready for the park. Let's go to the park. You can refer them back to this and you can say, first we're playing at home. Now we're playing at home. Next we're going to the park, or then we're going to the park. And it just helps to keep it really simple. Hopefully they'll understand it's not that you're ignoring them. You understand that we're going to the park. You've remembered that we're going to the park, but now we're playing. the park is what's happening next. Another example is, so we've got a more detailed timetable there on the left. That's sort of a whole day's routine, tells them all of the activities that are happening in the day. You can use that sort of plan alongside a now and next. So for example, in there isn't any tidy up time. So what I might do is when we get back from the soft play, let the children have some free play time. And I would then draw a quick now and next on the whiteboard and say, now we're tidying up, next we're having dinner. So you can use them in conjunction, whatever works for your child. But it might just be that they need this sort of long routine at the beginning of the day so they understand when things are happening, but then you can still sort of drip now and next ins throughout the day. The little plan on the in the middle of the screen with the numbers is what I was talking about when I said bookend your day with the same routine. So I quite like to use numbers because I think it then means you can make it into a bit of a sort of game with the children. So I would start the day by saying, okay, what are the 4 things we need to do this morning before we can get started with our day? Who remembers what we do first? So first we do breakfast, brilliant. After breakfast, we brush teeth. Then we're going to go and get dressed and put our shoes on. They're the 4 things, and you can work through it. Great, you've done 1, brilliant, 3 things left. What are we doing next? And it just means that the day starts the same and ends the same, and that lowers anxiety. And it also means nothing gets forgotten. It's nothing worse than getting to lunchtime and realizing, have you brushed your teeth today? So if you have certain things in the same routine, it just means things get remembered, and peace and harmony is what we're aiming for. So another example here, this is actually a plan for the whole week. So this may or may not be appropriate for your child. You gauge this for yourself. But some children find this really helpful, particularly if they know that something is happening later in the week that they either really love or are really not too keen on. And it helps to sort of give some perspective. So if it's something they're not keen on, maybe they don't want to go to the museum, you can show this to them and say, you know, I hear you, I understand that the museum is not your favourite thing, that you're not looking forward to it, but look at all these other things that we're doing this week that you really love. Equally, the flip side, if they're really excited about something, and so every day you have, are we seeing grandma tomorrow? Are we seeing grandma tomorrow? Are we seeing grandma tomorrow? You can show this to them, and hopefully that will help them to sort of count down how many sleeps it is till they see grandma, or they'll be able to look at it and see, if I'm swimming today, grandma's happening quite far away. I still need to go to the museum, craft, playground, and the doctors. That's all happening before I see grandma. So it will help them with that ordering of when things are happening. So the ordering of when things are happening, that's one of those planes I was talking about at the beginning in the air traffic control analogy. Trying to work out what order in which things are happening. That's a plane flying around their head. Let's land it for them. Let's show them this, make it really clear when things are happening. It's okay to show this to them with some gaps. If you think, actually, we don't know yet what we're doing on Wednesday afternoon, leave a gap. That's fine. At least the child then knows that you're aware that there's a gap and you are going to come up with a plan of something to do on Wednesday afternoon. But it helps them to sort of anticipate the different activities that are going to be happening during their week. It means they can look forward to things. It means hopefully they feel less anxious about things that they're maybe not looking forward to. So what are the benefits of having some routine and structure? Like, hopefully you already have identified some as we've gone throughout. You're thinking, actually, yeah, that would be really helpful. That would be really good for this. But I'll just run through a few of the key ones that I think. So it's really helpful for creating clear expectations in terms of your child's boundaries. So it makes it really clear for everyone to know what's expected. So for example, if one boundary you've put in place is that your child's going to have 2 snacks a day, a morning snack and an afternoon snack. We're going to try and avoid the endless grazing that inevitably can happen in the holidays. So morning snack and afternoon snack. If that is built into their routine, if it's built into the plan, it makes it super easy that if your child's had their snack and then they're playing in the garden and then it's dinner time, and then halfway through playing in the garden, they come in and say, I'm hungry, you can show them the plan and say, that's fine, sweetheart, because after you finish playing in the garden, it's going to be dinner time. And they'll say, but can I have a snack? And you can say, we've already had our snack, haven't we? If you have a look, we had our snack earlier, didn't we? So snack time's already happened for today, but I'm going to make dinner and that's going to be happening soon. So it makes it really easy to say, actually, this is not a negotiable thing. This is how it happens every day. And when things happen the same way every day, it's much easier to hold your boundary and maintain clear on those expectations. It also reduces sort of resistance in the children. So for example, with tidying up, if tidying up is built into the routine, it just comes much more naturally to everyone, and the children are much more likely to just go ahead and do it, rather than if it's sprung on them, it can then become, I'm just going to do this first, or I'm just going to do this first. Whereas actually, if it's part of the routine, they don't need to do anything else first. We tidy up and then we have dinner, or whatever it is that always happens in the same order. It makes it much, much easier for your child to just get on with what you've asked them to do. It can also help to reduce the amount of questions children are asking. So we've touched on this a bit already, but if you have a child that asks lots of questions, I think we can all sometimes struggle with that in the holidays when we have the children all day. It feels like children talk a lot and they ask lots of questions, which is lovely, but sometimes can be a bit difficult if we feel we're answering the same question again and again, maybe about, can we go swimming? Can we do this? When are we doing this? I'd like to do this. If we have a plan, it hopefully just, you're anticipating those questions, you're getting out ahead of them, and you're sort of answering the question before they've even asked it. And if they do ask it, you can refer them to the timetable. So if they are able to, you can even just sort of send them to have a look at it themselves. So if they say, can we go swimming, or when are we going swimming, you can just say, go and have a look on the wall and see, like, remind yourself of what the plan is, and then you can come and ask me. And hopefully they will then be able to sort of address these questions for themselves. And that also helps them to remember the answer, because they've worked it out for themselves. They're more able to retain the information, rather than when we give it to them, they sometimes don't retain the information. But if you help them to come to this, answer the question themselves, they're much more likely to remember and then hopefully ask less. And it also helps support changing in routine. So for example, if your plan was to go to the park and then Lucy is not very well, so now Lucy needs to go to the doctor's this morning instead, and you're a little bit worried about telling Matthew because you know he's really looking forward to going to the park. If you can take your visual timetable with you and talk to him really clearly about it, that we're not going to go to the park anymore because we need to go to the doctor's instead. We can take park out the timetable, put the doctor's in. We can empathise with Matthew that's really hard that the plan has changed, but we can then show Matthew, look, all these other things in the day, they're all staying the same. So it's just the park that's changed, and we will put the park back into the plan on a different day as soon as we can. So it actually helps to support a change in routine rather than creating a reliance on routine. It actually helps to create more flexibility for your child. I'm just going to finish off with some top tips I have for getting the most out of your routine. So I would recommend you do a 5 and 2 minute warning before you change activity, particularly if you're finishing something that your child really loves doing, or you're moving on to something that your child doesn't like doing. Helps to prepare them. So for example, if you're at the soft play, it's really helpful to say, in 5 minutes, we're going to be going home. is there anything else you'd like to do here with your last 5 minutes? So we're trying to get ahead of that question at the end of the 5 minutes where they say, but I just wanted to go and do this. Can I just go on the slide one more time? We're trying to get out ahead of that. So we say, you've got 5 more minutes. Is there anything else you would like to do? We're also going to say to them, in 5 minutes, we're going to be going home. When we get home, it will be time for, and we'll tell them, remind them whatever's next in the plan, lunch, free play, whatever it is. So they can start to anticipate what's coming up next. Also have a think about whether there are some activities that your child can pause rather than stopping. It's just much softer and your child will find it much easier to do. So for example, if it's a craft or a Lego activity that they're building, could they do it on a tray? Could you give them a shoebox? And then you can say to them, we're going to pause our Lego for now and have some dinner. They might come back to the Lego after dinner, or it might not be for a couple of days that they return to it. But pausing rather than stopping is much easier for a child to comprehend, and you will get much less of a sort of power struggle and resistance from them if they're pausing rather than stopping. So just have to think about your language and whether there's a way that they can keep part or all of what they're doing and just sort of pop it on the side for another day. And finally, so much easier said than done, as we touched on at the beginning, but avoid comparison. So try not to look at what other people are doing and think that you ought to also be doing that. We have all tried to do activities from Pinterest and our activities never look as good. We've all had those moments where families look really happy on Instagram and we're screaming at our children. We have all been there. All families are there. It's just that's not what people post. It's not what people talk about in the playground often. So let's try and avoid comparison. Let's try and be really honest with each other when we're struggling, because at the end of the day, we're all going through it. We all have the same difficulties. So let's try and be authentic with each other and let's not compare. We're all on our own journey and we're all doing what we think is best for our child. And at the end of the day, that makes you the best parent or carer. So I hope that that's been really helpful. If you're thinking this is great, I would love to, explore some next steps with this. So Widget is the name of the company that I referred to. So you go on their website and you can build some visual timetables. I think it's about £7.50 a month for a subscription. Can do it, don't have to do it, but that's an option if you want it. If you think this is great, but I would love to have a chat about how this looks specifically for my family, maybe you want to have a chat about how some specific difficulties your child has, maybe when the routine changes, or maybe you struggle to build the routine in the first place, you're not quite sure how that should look for your family, I'd be more than happy to do a little online session with you, and we can have a chat about how to sort of implement the guiding principles that I've given you. But I appreciate they're all just sort of guiding principles, and it might be difficult to work out how that's going to work for your family. Very happy to do a little online chat about that. Also, if you would like some help to actually have it implemented sort of in your household, very happy to come around and do what we call strategies in action, which is where I can model it for you. So I can talk your children through a plan for the day. I can show you how I would do that. And I can watch you do it and sort of give you in-person feedback on how you're doing it and maybe some suggestions on what you could do differently. I'm very happy to come and do that. So to access the sort of coaching and strategies and action type stuff, if you go on our website, tcbn.co.uk, or you can email me directly, either of those is great. But I hope that this has been really helpful for you to have a little think about how we can create some routine and structure to our school holidays, but in a way that isn't suffocating. This is all meant to be helpful for you and helpful for your children. So I hope you have a fantastic school holidays, and we are here if you need anything.